A father asked his 7-year-old son what happened in his catechism class that day. Little Johnny said to his dad, "Well, the teacher told us a story about when Jesus changed a lot of water into a lot of wine at a wedding." So his father asked, "Well, Johnny, what did you learn from that?" Johnny said, "Well, I learned that if you're going to have a wedding, you should always invite Jesus." So what can we learn from today's gospel? What can we take away? Here Jesus takes some plain water, just plain ordinary water, and turns it into wine. We find that kind of incredible and almost unbelievable, because how could you do that? It takes grapes to make wine. And more than that, it takes time to make wine. You can have grape juice in just a moment, but sometimes it takes months or years to make a good wine. How could anyone do it in a matter of minutes and without grapes? Such questions didn't bother our writer John, though. Apparently, he didn't even think of how they could do it. He wanted to know why Jesus did it. What did it mean? Most of the miracles which the gospel attributes to Jesus had a logical and practical explanation. He healed the sick because they were sick. He fed the hungry because they were hungry. He raised the dead because they died prematurely. But at a wedding, why did he turn water into wine? It wasn't to save a life. It wasn't to restore health. It wasn't to alleviate hunger. The only explanation that I can see is that he did it to keep a happy celebration from ending in embarrassment. And that seems like such a trivial thing. It's almost embarrassing to suggest it. Would the eternal Son of God concern himself with something so secondary? His mission was to save the world, not to cater to parties. This whole thing seems kind of frivolous to us at first. We might even wonder why they included it in the New Testament. But John called it a sign. It was a symbol of something beyond itself. It was a revelation. The event itself wasn't a big deal. To John, it was not a big deal. It was a small miracle with great meaning. To John, it was a sign of God's love for us, his beloved creation. Have you ever witnessed a miracle? Bet you have. Every Sunday here, at every Mass, wine is turned into blood, the precious blood of our Savior. That's a miracle. We're given a constant sign of his love for us. The event that occurred at Cana tells us also something about the person of Jesus. First of all, it was a sign, his presence at a wedding was a sign of his character. He was there as an invited guest. That means the host or hostess wanted him there. And it also means that he wanted to be there. This wasn't very typical of first century prophets at all. Look at John the Baptist. He lived in the desert. He kept away from people. He wouldn't normally be in the public at social events. He was kind of a mountain man. But not Jesus. He was a welcome guest at festive occasions. His turning water into wine was also a sign of his transforming power. It was a hint of things to come. In the future, he would turn frowns into smiles, despair into hope, fear into faith, and sinners into saints. This small miracle was also a sign of his sensitivity. He cared about human feelings, and his intervention saved a lot of people from what otherwise would have been a painfully awkward situation. Anyone who's ever been to a buffet, luncheon, or dinner that ran out of food knows how embarrassing that can be. Those who have already gone through the line are embarrassed, thinking they may have taken too much food. And those who are at the end of the line are embarrassed, thinking, well, they weren't really hungry after all. But think about the host. How embarrassing it must be for the host that he made such a miscalculation. We know, of course, that to be embarrassed is not a major tragedy. We've all experienced that at a time. But we also know that it is painful. And Jesus cared about that. So he performed his first miracle for no apparent reason except to save people from needless embarrassment. All of us have experienced small miracles like that. They weren't spectacular. We don't even think of them as miracles. They were just little acts of thoughtfulness and kindness, signs of God's love. We were feeling discouraged, and a note comes in the mail from a friend saying, just thinking about you. And somehow it helped. It lifted our spirits, and just to know that somebody was thinking about us. You know, sometimes a simple smile, a simple compliment, or a word of encouragement at the right time might actually be a small miracle for someone. Miracles can happen when God's people take action. I think of a woman in our parish who I know about, who each and every week visits several homebound people, bringing them smiles and conversation and the miracle of the Holy Eucharist with them. She helps them to experience God's love and presence in a very special way. If you've ever experienced a visit to a soup kitchen or food and shelter for friends here in Norman, you've seen volunteers freely giving their time and passing out coats and clothing to keep the people warm in the winter. Surely signs of God's love. Think of our own parish here. Each week, we witness the members of St. Vincent de Paul Society giving their own time and going out of their way to see to it that people with financial needs are visited and receive the help that they need with rent or utilities or in feeding their families. The main point of my telling you this is that I think that all of us can perform those kinds of miracles. Obviously, we can't turn water into wine, but we can do some things that will have a similar effect. We can be sensitive to the feelings and the situations of the people around us. Some of them may be having some kind of hard time. Some might be discouraged and can't even remember the last time they received some sort of encouragement or compliment. We can help break that. It doesn't take much effort to say, "You look nice," or "You did well." That's such a small thing to do. But to a discouraged person, one word of praise could mean everything to them. We all have the power to transform lives. The words that we say and the things that we do can turn frowns into smiles and despair into hope. Jesus has shown us how to use that power. Jesus did what only he was capable of doing that day in Cana. We can follow his example by doing what we are capable of doing for others through the gifts that we've been given. To quote the late Mother Teresa of Avila, "Do small things with great love." It was a small thing for Jesus to turn water into wine. It's a small thing for us to give someone a pat on the back, a word of praise, a warm hug, an hour of our time. But those things, simple as they seem, may turn out to be small miracles with great meanings and a sign of God's love.